Good morning. My name is Dr. Jennifer Lee Disney, and I'm honored to be sitting here with the South Carolina Mother of the Year from 2002, Florinette Renfrow. Florinette, thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Well, it's just so good to be here and to see some of you that I've seen before.
It's good to see you again.
Get acquainted again.
Thank you so much. Let's just start very simply. Why don't you tell us when and where you were born and raised?
Okay, I was born in a small town, Lakeview, South Carolina, and I had an unusual childhood because I lived on a farm, and the farm was on Main Street in Lakeview. We had a cow, we had mule stables, we had the corn crib, we had the cotton house, and the two big long grapevines, and most anything that anybody on a farm. So I consider myself not a city girl, but what would you say, a country girl.
Country girl.
And anyway, for 11.5 years, we lived in the old home place. And to me, that was just heaven, because everybody came and visited my grandmother, who was Aunt Nettie, and she got her mail, Aunt Nettie, not Lakeview, South Carolina, not any of the details.
Just Aunt Nettie.
Aunt Nettie.
That's great.
But anyway, I have to have a lot more information than that today. But anyway, I just loved it. But I was the only child for 11 years. And didn't know that the Lord had a very great surprise for me about where I lived a little bit later, or where I worked at when I got older. But anyway, we moved when I was 11.5, and I had another 2 sisters and 2 brothers. One of my baby brother was handicapped, and but anyway, I was so happy to have sisters and brothers, because everybody else just about did. And so it was just a wonderful thing to me, and I thought if I ever have children, I couldn't possibly love them anymore. Now, this was when I was
Exactly.
12 or 13, when I was very young. And of course I do, but I did enjoy them so much, because they filled a special place in my heart. And,
That's wonderful. Is there anything else you want to share with us about your family or your
well,
early childhood
when we
experiences?
moved years later, out in the country years later, after I was married and all, there was 800 in Lakeview. And they always teased us about the numbers they lost, just like, of course, it wasn't that big a number. But anyway, they always teased us about leaving Lakeview and messing up the 800, I guess.
800 was the population of
Right.
Lakeview.
When we moved out of Lakeview with our family later on. And I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself in the story.
That's okay.
But anyway, I always felt like that I was just so blessed. Aunts and uncles and cousins always came to the home place, and I enjoyed that so much.
So you grew up in a very large family.
Yes, and their family, and the past was, there were 11, but several generations, there were 11 children, a good number. My daddy's generation, they only had 2 children, a girl and a boy. But anyway.
So tell us about your education and your young adult life.
Well, I went to school in Lakeview. That was in my hometown, and I went to, it wasn't called kindergarten then, but what I remember about it was they called it play school. Have you ever heard my generation calling it play school instead of kindergarten? And enjoyed that. And then elementary school had some dear teachers that I loved through the years. And there's something good about small places. You get to know people. That's a very special thing about it. And now, what next would you?
Anything about your education, or what you remember as your dreams, goals, and aspirations as a young woman?
Well, since I was the only child, Mother spent a lot of hours in the kitchen with me, and she taught me to cook, and I enjoyed that. But maybe she wouldn't have had time, had I not been the only one. But anyway, that's just something that meant a lot to me too. Mother stayed home most of her her years as an adult, she did have some job. She ended up in a bank, working in the bank at Lakeview. And Daddy was a politician, and he really enjoyed. We're not enjoying politics right now, are we? We're getting into it, but not.
So your dad, in addition to running a farm, did
it
your
was
mom
a
and
small
dad, after
farm.
you moved, did you continue to run a farm, or did
For
that
some
change?
years, even we were tobacco. We lived in the age of more tobacco farmers than there are now, and even grew at one time Turkish tobacco, and that was just some things that he did.
So your dad was a politician,
And
your mom spent a lot of years
at
working
home,
in the home,
right,
and a lot of years
right.
working outside the home.
That's
as well.
right. That's the way it was.
Okay. So tell us about how you met your husband.
Oh, well, I'm just going to read. May I read it to you?
Tell
Because
us
I wrote it.
Tell us what you're reading from. It's your own words, right?
My sister did 2 books, and she says she's working on the 3rd one, of friends and neighbors and of their story about how they met their husbands and so anyway, I didn't get in the first book. I was slow. It took me to the second to get started. So,
Okay, so wonderful. Read from us
All
in your
right.
own words how you met
Our
your
big
husband.
secret, and we each had a picture, one picture on the pages that we're doing, and this is Jimmy and Florinette Renfrow, and we were married the 8th of February 1953 in Florence, South Carolina. And one day, I was sitting on my porch, and porches were such an important thing when I was a child. To go, my grandmother and my great aunt lived with her, and then we lived with grandmother too. And when they got through with their work, they went out on the porch and they sat, and that meant neighbors come over and sit with us, And so anyway, I was sitting out on the porch after I'd finished my lessons for that day, and I saw a handsome boy with blonde curly hair pass by in a strip down. I bet you don't even know what a strip down is, do you?
A strip down.
It's a long time ago, like young men would just take the parts of cars, take all parts of cars, and they would make something like they could go around the farm. They could, they could haul things. It was almost like a truck without sides. And so anyway, he was driving this strip down, and I was about 13 years old at the time. And later, I found out his life story from a good friend of mine, whose family had been neighbors of his family several years back. But he had come to town to visit them because they had moved into town and were living on the next block. And so anyway, he was actually visiting them. We had never met at that time. His name was Jimmy Renfrow, and he was 14, and he went to school in Nichols, South Carolina. That was about 13 miles from Lakeview. But we'd be coming to Lakeview to play baseball. After several weeks went by, I was at a ball game. I always went with my daddy to the ball games because Mother had small children, as I have mentioned before.
Right.
And so she didn't always get to do these things. And so anyway, who should I meet but the boy who was in the strip down? And I later learned that he had converted that car from an old family car, and he wanted to be a race driver someday. That was his ambition at that time. At the ball game, I realized that he had metallic green eyes that matched the color of his family's real car that they drove to church, and not stripped down, of course, on Sunday night. And then one day we were not old enough to date. We ended up at several parties together, like birthday parties and that type party. And then one day we were old enough to date, but only if we went to Baptist Training Union on Sunday night and were home by 9 a.m. And for years, Jimmy said we never got to date past 9 p.m. for years, several years. Or if we went to the movies. We had actually, believe it or not, in Lakeview 800, we had a movie theater, and it changed 3 times a week.
Wow.
And we both spent a lot of time there because at that time, you remember, you didn't have a bad movie. They were very careful about the kind of movies that. There's a lot different than today.
That's right.
But anyway, let's see what next. I soon found, I got to meet him at the ball game, and I soon found out that he loved animals as I did. My first Christmas gift from him was a blonde Cocker Spaniel puppy named Dixie. And of course, you know Dixie. You know why we like Dixie. I gave him a green Jansen sweater to match his eyes and handkerchiefs monogrammed with an R from a store called Razor and Clardy's in Mullins, South Carolina. Do you know where Mullins is? Not far
Right.
from where we lived at that time. Both of our families shopped there often. We also realized that both of us had spent many Saturday nights eating hot dogs at a fast food place in Mullins, but we never met. And then they had Jim had an uncle that worked with the railroad, and a lot of times they would meet the train in Mullins. But all these things were going on, and I didn't even know. You know, he and his mother would meet the train and speak to his uncle. Both of us had eaten so many times at Little Petey Lodge. Have you ever heard of Little Petey Lodge? It's a place that at that time, usually if someone was getting married, there would be a special time, you know, for the bridesmaid or something. And that was over near on the other side of Nichols. And his father and my mother had both been Methodists at one time, but we were Baptists. My daddy's family were all Baptists, and so when Mother came to Lakeview, when they were married, she joined the Baptist church, so she would be, you know, with the family. And I had a cousin who had married Jimmy's mother's sister, a distant cousin. But so we knew each other, you know, as family and friends. And some qualities I especially liked about Jim included his good manners, his kindness to people, as well as animals, and we both loved animals, and his love for family. At that point in his life, he didn't drink or smoke. To me, his only fault was that he drove too fast, and we fussed about that all the time. And he fussed about me wearing a kerchief. I'd have him to wait a minute to get the kerchief so it, you know, with the... During the 9th grade, Jimmy went to Camden Academy in Camden, South Carolina. He had a good year there, but during the year his father had cancer, so he did not get to go back the next year. Sometime while he was at Camden, he would thumb home. Do you know what thumbing is? You wouldn't dream of doing that anymore. But anyway, a lot of times he thumbed to get home from Camden Academy. Much safer than it is now.
Right.
But anyway, another thing that he would do, other times he would drive his truck that they used on the farm. And he would drive his truck, and he parked it in somebody's yard. And he would slip off and put a pillow under his cover and slip back to Lakeview. And then hurry back. Anyway, he would put I would put a pillow under his covers at school and would slip away to Lakeview for a few hours, which I repeated. Jim's favorite possession was a yellow Willis Jeepster that his daddy had bought, convertible that his daddy had bought him, which his daddy had bought for him. And I always wore a scarf, as I said before, and it blew my hair, and I wasn't happy. We fussed about this too. That car was his greatest pride until he wrecked it. In my 14th summer at East Cherry Grove at that time, on his birthday, July the 4th, Jim gave me a ring. And of course I hid it. I hid it. I certainly didn't show it to anybody. We went to Marion County. Oh, now I'm getting ahead of myself. When we were 15 and he was 16, I was 15, we decided to go ahead and get married secretly. Now, the big secret, remember. How would we do that with a 9 p.m. curfew and just a few hours for a date? My cousin, my father's cousin, and my cousin, of course, too, was judge of probate in the next county, Dillon County. And we knew we couldn't go there because he'd tell Daddy. And so, anyway, that day was the first, and I know this is something that I hate to say. But anyway, we went to Marion. I cut school. The only time I ever did it in my life. And he cut a lot. But anyway, that day was the first and only day that I had ever cut school. Funny how I still feel guilty about it today. Next, we had the idea the only place left was Florence, and we would just see what happened there. And so, anyway, I said it was about an hour away. Jim played basketball, so we had to go back for his game later in the evening. We did make it, but a patrolman stopped us, and Jim told him his father was sick, and he told us to go out on, but to be careful and drive carefully. Anyway, probate judge Kenneth Grimsley gave us the license. We didn't know we'd be asked to verify the year of our births to prove that we were old enough to get married. That was a requirement. And so we had to have some help with the math. And we didn't know that. And also we didn't know they published it in the paper. And had no idea that's how naive we were. I don't know how we got about Kenneth Grimsley, and Adelaide Clayton married us when the days were up, for a woman that did that for Kenneth Grimsley. But anyway, on Sunday afternoon we were married by Adelaide Clayton with my closest friend and a good friend of Jimmy's. The two of them went with us. Only one other friend knew that we were married, and she was the girl that we were getting married, the girl that he visited, when I saw him for the first time. So
right.
Anyway, let's see, and she got married the next month. I have written down here. So anyway, on Sunday afternoon, let's see, I've just read that. We didn't know that all marriages was reported in the Florence Morning News, a local newspaper. And one of the people that read it was my mom and daddy's next door neighbor, and they never told on us. It came another way. They were good friends, loyal friends.
That's right.
But anyway, let's see now. I look at that. The Florence Morning News is a local newspaper. Soon our secret was out, with several people in town seeing our news in the paper. In those days, no married students, different than today, no married students were allowed to continue and finish high school. It was 17 years later when I went back to night school to get my high school diploma. I wanted a Lakeview High School diploma, and you could go and get, there was another way you could go too. But they were having classes at the high school. And so my brother, in the meantime, I'm getting ahead of myself, but we had children. And so my brother was one of my babysitters,
Wow.
So I thank him for that. So I could really have it. And my oldest son wanted to pay for the high school diploma. He thought that would be special, mothers getting a diploma. And so anyway,
Wow.
that made me very happy.
That's beautiful.
Anyway. Oh, and another thing. One day I was called, and see, a lot of time has passed now since we have, at this point, we have 8 children, and we had 3 more later on. But anyway, we had the 8 children, and I had started working at my church with the 3 and 4 year olds. Like when the 4-year-olds came back from school. And I was enjoying that. I guess you'd say that was my first job. I cooked at home, and babies. I would be mother's babysitter when she had things to do. So anyway, I was called, and one of and when I was working at the church, and I thoroughly enjoyed that with the children, and I had one child in kindergarten there, and the others were in school. My husband didn't want me to go to work, and I didn't want to leave my children, at home. And not saying it's bad for anybody that does have the opportunity.
Right.
But to do that, and wants to do it. But anyway, while I was working at the church, I got a call, and from the school, and they said one of our aides is not working. Would you like to take her place? And I was just thrilled. Mm-hmm. I was just so excited about that. And so only one child was in kindergarten outside of the school and all. We didn't have that. In other words, that was started while I was in there, that we had a kindergarten group.
Right.
But anyway, I worked there a couple of years. And then I got a call, and I never, what would you say? I had never looked for a job. I never tried to find one, but they found me, and I was delighted. Because I always had this little dream in the back of my mind of having my own kindergarten. And the funniest thing about it, with prayer, it happened. There was a kindergarten right by where I was living later on, and the teacher had to stop and do something. She had another job. And so anyway, I had some experience, a couple of years with kindergarten age children. And then one day, I thought about the job and really considered, the job at school at all. And so I worked several years there. And then we had a book club that met in the library. And they called and asked if I would be interested in working. I was the only person, and I had a helper or two. But anyway, I was at that library for 30 years.
Wow.
And guess what?
What?
By our home, there was a corn, is where we grew the corn, by the grandmothers. Now, we're going back to the grandmothers from where we moved to, some years earlier. Well, anyway, my aunt was the owner of the property that the library was built on, and it was in the cornfield. So there wasn't a cornfield anymore. Someone else had my cornfield. And so I could look out at the library out the window, and I could remember what a wonderful time I had as a child at my grandmother's, And then I got to see a lot of people at the library. So and this started the computers while I was there. I learned some things about computers there. I don't do much with them anymore. My husband is the computer man now. But anyway, let's go.
What an amazing story. Is there more to the story of you and your husband?
Well,
how you secretly got married, how it came out to your parents?
Right. Well, 17 years later, we were on the verge of a divorce, and it was we had 8 children. It was just such a, just so
You had
painful.
8 children, 17 years later, at the moment when you had 8 children at that time.
Right.
Wow.
And actually, we were just writing the last papers we had signed, and the Lord just helped us and changed our whole. My husband became a Christian. He accepted the Lord as his Savior. And we just had a wonderful, we had 3 more children.
Wow.
Samantha, who used to be up this way, and she married someone from Bentonville. And then we had 2 more boys.
Wow.
And
What amazing.
this used to be my favorite. So today we enjoy it. At this time, we have actually counted our grandchildren and children together. Most of the time we don't separate it, as far as numbers. And since today we enjoy 49 grandchildren. When this book was written, and great-grandchildren. Several years ago, Jim retired after 50 years. He worked for 50 years. He started with working for a carpenter because he didn't like to farm. His family was farmers too. Most of us around there were farm families. And but anyway, he worked at
carpentry.
Yes, and he worked there a while, and then he worked. And we had several mills, and he worked those places. And
Wow.
but this is what I put in the end of. We are reminded of the words of the poet by Robert Browning. Grow old along with me. The best is yet to be, the last of life, for which the verse was made. Our times are in his hand, who saith, a whole I plan. Youth shows but half. Trust God. See all. Not be afraid. So that anyway, we have retirement's wonderful, and we visit the grandchildren and.
What a beautiful story.
And the children.
15 and 16 running
Right.
off to get married. 17 years later, you had a difficult move, 8 children, and you both found each other to each
But
other
these-
again through God and the
That's
Lord.
right.
And then you had 3 more children. And here
Yes.
you are today.
Uh,
After how many years of marriage?
we were married in 53.
1953.
Right.
So over 60 years
Mm-hmm.
of marriage with 11 children.
Right.
I think you told me 26 grandchildren, but
Right.
more than that,
Right,
49
with the
or
others.
50 when you count the
Right.
great-grandchildren.
That's right.
Wow.
But this is my
Or
sister.
that.
My sister wrote this in the front of the book. Now I don't have to read that, but anyway, she dedicated her book, and I appreciate it so much because I love the little.
That is beautiful. Would you mind reading that to us? Read that. The dedication to the whole book is about you and your husband. That's a good way to read that dedication.
The dedication. I know no couple who married at 15 and 16 had a solid marriage for 45 years. Now, weathered many challenging times. They were weathered many challenging times. Had 11 children, around 50 grandchildren, great grandchildren, and enjoyed life to the fullest. The special couple is my sister, Florinette, and her husband, Jimmy Renfrow, whose story is a blessing to share. Florinette was South Carolina's Mother of the Year in 2002, and as an older sister, she was like a mother to me and a model of love, determination, encouragement, and deep faith. I dedicate this book to you, Jimmy and Florinette, with the hope that that young couples will read your story and receive the blessing of your commitment and dedication. So anyway, that was made at the beach.
Wow.
The year after Hazel, it took a year or two for them to build the beaches back. You know, there was a great storm that we had in South Carolina in October one year. And so anyway, this was a picture of us taken down there. We've missed a few summers, but we do get together most summers and haven't missed one lately.
Is that picture of your family a beach picture, the one that's down here framed? Would you mind
Yeah, oh
holding that
yes,
up to the camera?
oh yes.
You
That's
mentioned beach trips.
actually the
Beautiful.
one that we made last week is not framed. Is not framed yet. It takes a while because everybody wants to get one. You know, we have to wait for them to.
So when
but
you
I
hold it
just-
up high so the camera can see.
Mhm.
When was that taken?
That was taken the last day or two before we left the beach on Sunday. On
Wow.
Saturday, not Sunday. I don't know why it says. But anyway, this was it mentioned that to say something about some of the things that happen in your life and all. And
That's
so I
beautiful.
usually said, and we had twins last year in the family, and anyway, I think
So
they
turn
used
that
their
around.
little
Show us this
toe,
beautiful family tree.
the family tree, and she hasn't put this in a frame either. But the twins, I think she used their little feet, little toes.
And those are
The smallest ones you see are probably theirs.
those are
That's-
thumbprints, fingerprints
Right.
of all the
and toe prints.
and toes of all the
So,
grandchildren.
But each family will get one of those when
That's
we get them all
amazing.
put together.
How have you been able? First of all, congratulations on an amazing story with your husband, your children, your great grandchildren, all these things that you brought. The book from your sister, the family tree, the photograph is a true testament to the love that your family obviously shares with one another.
Well, thank you.
It's clear as we talk why you were selected to be a South Carolina Mother of the Year. So I want to ask you a few questions about that.
Sure.
Let me ask you first. What does motherhood mean to you?
Well, I have always enjoyed my time, and we left two girls that they knew that I was coming off this morning, trying to help me get ready, and they pop in like that when I need them.
That's so sweet.
Two of them actually had children that were going to practice over at school, and they stopped and stayed with me about an hour and a half, and we live close, and we're about 6 miles from Dillon, and they live in Dillon. We live in the country at a big city place called Getty's Mill. It used to have one store and a mill pond. It has a mill pond too. I grew up with the town with a mill pond, and
So motherhood means
it just means I looked at those little twins and I wanted to take them home with me.
Wow.
They were so special. That's the first time. Now we have a daughter that just a granddaughter that just loved to go on mission trips, and I had last week I had two on mission trips, and Honduras, and we had another one going to Ireland, and they were doing something related to witnessing, and go ye therefore. And so anyway.
So, I mean, you have worked inside the home raising 11 children. You have worked outside the home in several jobs
Yes.
that you mentioned. Your mom worked inside and outside the home.
Mhm.
You've obviously been involved in other activities in the community, volunteerism, church. How have you been able to balance all of these different activities? How have you been able to do it?
Well, one thing, the children always helped me. I always could count on them and still can. And we enjoy being together. And my mother, after some years, my dad was an alcoholic. But with treatment, he overcame, and we were so worried because he was getting so old and all, and he had never accepted the Lord as his Savior, and he's the Lord of our lives. And we wanted so much him to be to believe in the Lord and Jesus Christ. And he accepted the Lord, and the preacher had an idea. He was so old and couldn't do it, walk into the pool and all. But he said, let's get two of the boys, one on each side. And that was so special because from the time my mother came to Lakeview and changed from Methodist to Baptist, she had been praying that my daddy would. There's just some wonderful things that have happened in our life, the way our children went to school. If you think about it, people would say, you can't go to school. You can't. But the Lord just had something waiting for us every time away. The first two boys went to military school in New York. And another one was accepted there, but he wanted to play football for in Spartanburg. And so Timmy went to school there. And there was just a story behind each child and how things happened that they were able to go to school. They'll tell you all these hundreds and thousands of dollars, but if children they might cut grass, ours cut grass, and all kind of things like that at school and different places. And Beth, our photographer, went to photography school. But others, the Lord has shown them a way that they could go to college, and I give Him the glory. And I'm so thankful for these children.
Wow.
Not all of them didn't go with us to, when you're your mother of the year, you go to Florida. But
tell us about
a
that.
good many of them went, and also, but.
What did it mean to you, first of all? What did it mean to you to be named the South Carolina Mother of the Year in 2002?
Well, I was just thrilled. It was almost unbelievable, that it could happen.
Tell us about what
I
that
still
year.
my start still skips a beat when I think about it. There's so many good things, and different places ask us to speak. And I told one church that asked us, I said, now listen, if you hear anything bad about us, we might. We're trying to forget the bad things.
And you had a year of service as Mother of the Year, right? When you went and you made speeches, and you tell us about some of that year, what that year was like. Where did you go?
It was churches and different places mostly that, and I worked in a crisis closet. And that's something I could carry children with me too, in a church crisis closet. And I thoroughly enjoyed that, collected clothing, and that was a blessing.
Wow.
But then it was sort of funny because in our family we'd always done that anyway. Someone has a baby, they bring the baby things they had, and so I was used to that, and it was just continuing another way that you could help each other and help people, and so I enjoyed that.
Did you mention Orlando? Did you go to national? Was that the national convention?
Right, in Orlando.
Now
the children stayed somewhere else. But anyway, it was nice and we enjoyed it.
And you got to go to the State House and the Governor's Mansion?
Oh, yes.
What was that like?
We had a tea, I think, at the Governor's Mansion and visited. It was several months ago. I will tell you this. I guess this is the appropriate time to tell. Well, anyway, we went to something that we were Right to Life, and there was a meeting there, to talk about it and all. And one of the men that was in the other room, I'll say, in the place where they meet and talk about their different things and all, asked me to stand and I had no idea that they even knew anything about it. But it was sweet, it was nice. And
yes, you to stand
thoughtful,
to be recognized
right,
as
right.
a mother of the year.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So that was a long time afterwards. But I was invited. The whole family was invited during the time, and they enjoyed that too. Getting to go to the State House and
That's great.
they,
Let me ask you some more broader questions
Sure.
about thinking about your daughters and thinking
Mm.
about your granddaughters and great grands. What do you think are the most important issues facing women today?
Oh, there's so many problems we've got in our country. It's hard to say. I think we need to be very thoughtful and really put some time into thinking what we're doing. I don't know, in our part of the country sometimes, people vote if granddaddy did it or uncle somebody did it, or they don't put much thought into who they vote. It's just like they want a continuation of what's been in the past. Well, it's not like it was at one time in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the greatest, maybe we don't do enough in that area to stand up for the things that, and we feel, and different people have different feelings, but we feel that if the Bible says it, that we believe it, and we try to be true to those things, even if it's painful sometimes. And people.
So your faith is very important to you.
Yes, very
obviously.
important. When I was younger, I got out of everything but WMU. In the clubs, I was in a book club at the library. And I'm not saying there's a thing wrong with anything like that, but I couldn't do it. And the children and the babysitters, so I just, Sunday school, of course, and Sunday school class and things like that was the continuation of what I loved.
You've told us about lots of activities and things that you've done. Is there anything else you want to mention that we may have missed? Activities in the community, other jobs, church activities, anything else you want to share? Things that you have been involved in?
Well, I've been blessed. I've been on several mission trips. The first mission trip I went on was we did a lot of home missions around the county. We are a poor county. And, within our churches, we joined together, and had a crisis closet and things like that. But one thing I enjoyed so much, I went to Africa, Zambia,
Oh, wow.
and soon after I was Mother of the Year, sometime in the next 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
And then the next year, Jim went back with us, and he went to Africa too. And we went back to the places that we'd visited before to see if they were doing, before other things were done, if they had done what they're supposed to. And that was such a joy.
And these were mission trips through your church?
Right.
What church?
Exactly.
You want to tell us the church?
Well, it was actually through my children's church.
Okay.
I went with them on now the first one that I went on was not that far away, in Kentucky. And but that was through the church. And then the next year before last, I went to South America. On 2 trips. And the same way, I went first with my son, and then my husband went to there the second time. Guatemala is where we went, and that time.
Wow.
And I want to go back to Africa one more time so bad.
Wow. That's
But
amazing.
anyway.
International missions.
Right.
That's-
It was such a blessing to me.
Do you think women's work and women's roles as mothers are adequately recognized by society?
Well, I think it depends on the area you come from. Some places they are, and some places that they're not very.
Do you feel that your work and your role as a mother has been adequately recognized? I mean, the Mother of the Year
More,
award is
more
one
so.
way, right?
More than I ever dreamed. Not that I deserved it by any means, but anyway.
When you think of your daughters and granddaughters, and we talked before about balancing work outside the home, work inside the home, volunteerism, how do you think younger women today, how are they able to balance all these things? Do you think it's easier for them, it's harder for them than than how you were able to balance coming up?
Well, I had a lot of support, you know. I had a lot of aunts and uncles and grandparents, and I was born with three grandmothers, and so when I was very young, children would say, "We don't even have one." You know, children that you went to school with.
Right.
And I was blessed.
You've always had a big family
Right.
support network.
That's so important.
And it looks like your family continued that tradition, right? The granddaughters,
We
the
get a lot of
children and
teasing about
grandchildren.
that.
So does that family support network continue?
Yes,
your
yes,
family?
that's.
It's also historically been the case, and you mentioned this, that men have typically brought home the bacon. Women have sometimes needed a second salary to help make the
Right.
family survive. Sometimes they've been able to be stay-at-home moms. Sometimes they're both working outside the home, and so men historically have done less of that work in terms of help in the
Right.
home and the family and child care. Men of this generation, younger generations, tend to be doing more of that work. Is that something you observe with your daughters, grandchildren, great-grands compared to you and your husband when you came up? How do you look at how men's roles, I guess, in the family and the home have changed, if they have?
Well, let me use this little story for an illustration. The family of the twins, these were their first children, and when these children when this son, the grandson, went to college, his mama moved up to Spartanburg too, and so then he married up there. And so she was a nurse, and she is a nurse. I mean, she had been working as a nurse. But I don't know whether she'll ever come back to see us or not, because she's enjoyed her two grandchildren so much. So anyway, I guess our whole story is, I remember, our house burned at some time in the past. In the story, I didn't even mention that there. But my aunt and uncle were in Virginia with their daughter and her family, and they didn't even stop. I mean, they didn't even, they just came straight to our house coming back before they even went home. And that's just the blessings that I've received with my family and all that.
Wow, it's beautiful. Let me ask you this. What does feminism mean to you?
Isms don't mean an awful lot. I enjoy being a woman, and
That's good. I like that.
and a country girl.
Isms don't mean a lot to you. You enjoy being a woman.
I'm glad that I got to work those years, though, because I got to see a lot of people that the first years of my life I did not work except in the home, and so it was a blessing to have a job that fit in with my life, I guess you'd say.
That's good. Do you think we live in a world where women and men have equal opportunities to be who they want to be in terms of mothers, fathers, work in the work world, work at home, not stay at home?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that would be a good thing if women and men have that type of equality? And do you think that we've achieved that?
Let me tell you a funny story that'll go along with that. When next to the last son, one of the younger children that was born later in life, he made our son made a statement that his wife was going to have Mother's Day every day, and so it caught on. It's been sort of a family joke, I guess you'd say.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So my husband joined the club too.
That's great. Mother's Day
So
every day.
I get to choose about once every other week to go to Florence, the big city from where I live, an hour and a half or something like that. So funny things happen. But anyway, we tease him about that because I don't want him to quit. I want him to continue to have Mother's Day every day.
I love that.
And,
Mother's Day
every day. Right.
And your life, your family, the love of this beautiful family network is a testament to what mothers can do in families and in society to provide that loving support. And it should be Mother's Day every day. I like that.
Well, it is. we just enjoy seeing them come and bringing the children. And I made them a playhouse upstairs.
That's beautiful.
Dollhouses. We've got a village dollhouses all the way around the room, and you can pick your house, and
Oh,
your
my
furniture's in a
goodness.
box over here, and you can buy your furniture and you pretend.
That's wonderful.
Have to do a lot of pretending.
Do you have any questions for us or anything else you'd like to share?
I just hope that you'll be able to continue this for other people in the future. I was so sorry when I heard that the name had been changed. And have you gone back to the?
Do you mean the South Carolina Mothers
yes.
Association? Well, thanks to Martha Cranford and Shirley Fishburne, I kind of got involved and connected with the South Carolina Mothers Association. And as you know, the committee itself kind of chose, the national office was going in a different direction. So they chose to kind of end the statewide selection process for Mothers of the Year. But this project lives on, I think, through the archives, at the Louise Pettis Archives at Winthrop University. We've established the South Carolina Mother of the Year archives, and this oral history project is a part of that, recording the stories of the committee members and the mothers like you, so that future generations of women can watch your stories, hear your stories, and learn wonderful lessons and wisdom about what it means to be a woman, to be a mother.
Right.
To kind of share that love and that conversation across the generations. So I hope in some small way this project is carrying that tradition on.
Well, one thing I was going to bring in, and my husband had already gone to Walmart. I'm doing a book for the 50. Now, not writing the book. I'm using pictures, and cousins have given me pictures, and friends, and sometimes just loaned. And I've got, you know, those things they use in offices, the notebooks that you can put the different pages in, you know.
Right.
Well, anyway, one of my sons gave me enough of those to fix for all the children, and so something I'm working on, and I have it out and have one of them out in the car, is historical things that have, like the cemeteries, and I'm taking I sent my daughter Beth that does the photography. And the book will have everything from the old family cemeteries that belong to our family, and the different churches and the work there, and
That's great.
something about each child. But it goes back to before I was born. And I was born in 37. My husband was born in 36.
I was just going to ask you that, 36 and 37, wow.
Right.
Well, what a great contribution you can give to your family. And
Well, I'm just enjoying it. It started, we had a special day in 2007 that it was the birthday of Lakeview, and it gone back to Ford's Mill, Page's Mill. Then someone married that inherited the pond, and then later on they decided to name it Lakeview. So it's a very wonderful place. It's just so wonderful to live there. Small town.
Well, thank you for preserving that history, your family history, and it's part of South Carolina history. It's part of our national history.
I'm so excited about that, about the loans of the different things that I needed, you know, from other people and all stories, and so I'm enjoying that. That's my thing right now.
That's great.
In the next few years.
Well, that's what this is all about. So I want to thank you, Florinette Renfrow, for a wonderful interview. Congratulations on, again, being named the 2002 Mother of the Year Award. Thank you for sharing your life, your story, your family with us. We appreciate it.
I appreciate you inviting me.